Fast Market on the Schwab Network. I'm Diane King Hall alongside Kevin Hinks from the CVO. Time now for our Cash Tag segment. For that, we want to bring in our next guest. That is Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Taking a look at Dollar Tree today. Dollar Tree has had a great year in terms of the share price, Megan. But let's get into the data that you have, because you all obviously look out over the consumer, and I think it's even more important now given the data blackout that we're in. What does your data show you about how Dollar Tree stacks up against peers or rivals?
So when we look at Dollar Tree versus other value perceived peers like a Dollar General, even like a Five Below, we really see some underperformance, not only in consumer sentiment, also in just forward-looking demand. We like to measure that in web visits, so just consumers who are curious, seeing what these stores have, seeing what prices might be. And we're seeing a bit of a split signal here, and we're seeing kind of a clear line in the sand. And this differentiates from what you just talked about whenever you consider the stock price. I think stock is up about 27% year to date. It's up off of lows from earlier this month after a positive reception to its investor day. And so we're starting to see some divergence here. So for us, we're seeing signs that consumers are trading down, or a pocket of consumers are trading down. Certainly some of those consumers are going to Dollar Tree, but we're just seeing signs that more of those consumers, when they're trading down, they're more likely to go to Dollar Tree's competitors. They're more likely to go to Dollar General. They're more likely to go to Five Below. They're more likely to go to Walmart, or even potentially Amazon, as Amazon's delivery range expands. And so we're seeing a little bit of divergence forming just in what consumers are saying and what they're talking about, and how the investor outlook looks for Dollar Tree. So for us, this will certainly be interesting to watch heading into earnings, and then just longer term into the holiday season, because we're starting to see signs of a little bit of consistent weakness and a little bit of consistent underperformance, contrasting with that a little bit more of an investor, bullish outlook.
Megan, I'm reading the exact same thing that your data is saying, which is they've been doing better lately, but the numbers like sales growth and margins are all starting to deteriorate and slow down. And we talk a lot about LikeFolio when your data diverges with the price of the stock, but your data is pretty much in line with what's happening. Sure, there's been a slight recovery in the underlying, but your data and what I read from two different analysts saying things aren't getting better, they're actually starting to deteriorate. Is that what you guys are seeing? Because your data here in both charts you have, not great, Megan.
Yeah, this is one of those names where, if you're asking us to bet on a name that's going to capture, potentially steal market share, to potentially overperform, to be a name that we like long term, we look at that consumer demand. That web data really helps us predict that forward-looking demand, and we see that heading down and, to the right. You see that on the chart right there. And then also whenever you compare it versus peers, you don't like to see a split like the one we're recording, where we have, a bucket of peers who are, performing better, and then you have Dollar Tree, which is losing momentum. So this just tells us that while management is touting changes it's making, it's talking about, improving its inventory, trying to get better items or better performing items on its shelf, improving its multi-price assortment. So, more items beyond that $1 bucket, which certainly could help. We just haven't seen that gain traction with consumers yet. And for us, perhaps the longest term indicator of forward-looking demand is consumer sentiment. And we really haven't seen that move the needle yet. We hear, consumers talking about Dollar Tree. For a couple of years, it kind of had a viral novelty element going for it, where consumers like to go in, get things before holidays, fun little knickknacks or decorations. But we're not seeing that that spark like we were before here. We're seeing consumers who are talking about stores that may be unorganized, perhaps unclean. They're talking about, the sizing of some of the items in Dollar Tree has been lackluster. They may be selling something for $1, but you get like 2 items. So in this package, a smaller package or volume, I should say. And so I think that there are certainly some room for improvement for Dollar Tree. And like you mentioned, Kevin, we just aren't seeing that improvement in the consumer on our end quite yet.
Megan, let me ask you this, though. I have heard with this year that you were seeing a trade down with consumers in general, and that was benefiting or has been benefiting the Dollar Trees and the Dollar Generals of the world. Are we reaching a point where it's more just Dollar General? And look, Five Below is not even $1, so it's curious to me that is the standout there. Is there a trade down that's still happening with consumers that does benefit a Dollar Tree or Dollar General?
Yeah, certainly. And Dollar General, I think, has been one on our radar. If you want to talk about improvement and material improvements in the consumer sentiment, that's been Dollar General. It's improved, not only its, perceived novelty options, but also it's essential. So it's grocery, it's fresh produce. Consumers are saying, I can actually go to Dollar General now and get the things I need and feel like they're getting something of high quality. We've seen improvement in the way that they've talked about stores and just the shopping experience at large. So I think that there are certainly winners in this bucket because the consumer continue to be bifurcated in our data. We look at these high earners and we see them continuing to spend, continuing to grow their spend. And this is present whenever you look at a report like a Delta, like a United. They talked about their premium travelers continuing to spend and being resilient. But then when we look at these lower income consumers, we start to see that spend pull back a little bit. And that certainly doesn't benefit a name like a Dollar Tree, who, while it certainly has captured some of those higher earning spenders that are trading down, its core base of consumers who are reliant on it for those values just don't have as much buying power as they have had in the past.
All right, Megan, we will leave our conversation there. That is Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Thanks a ton for bringing in latest perspective there, especially to get more consumer information. Now, for the trading perspective on all things Dollar Tree.